especially as believers in Christ, one of the things that I notice that we will do is we will blame the devil for every single thing. And don't get me wrong, the devil is constantly after the saints. He is constantly after people, but it is not always a devil. Sometimes it's just you. Sometimes it's your mindset. Sometimes it's your deeper core issue. Sometimes it's your insecurities, right? And so one of the things I had to learn to say was, you know what, Lord, is it me? Right? Is this a me issue? And one thing that I realized, I'm going to be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, it was a me issue. Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Samantha, and this is On the Hill, where we talk all things biblical womanhood, homemaking, femininity, inner healing, and overall intentional living. And on today's video, we're going to talk about some things, some signs that you might be a wounded woman, a woman that has some wounded parts of who she is. So the first thing I want to do is encourage you, right, that all of us have things that we are working through. And as I just said it, I wanted to correct what I just said, right? So I said a wounded woman. And so I don't even want to say a wounded woman, but a woman that has wounded parts of who she is, because one of the things I really try to help my clients understand is that as we see the different things within our lives that are not pleasing to the Lord, things that we may be struggling with, a lot of times we can feel very condemned and we beat ourselves up, and there's guilt that comes with that. And so it's understanding that the things that come up for you are like a pair of shoes or clothes that you put on, right? So it's not who you are, right? Like this shirt is not me, it's something that I put on. And so when it comes to the wounded parts of who you are, or the things that come up for you that may not be pleasing to the Father, and even the things that you are not satisfied with in your own life, understand that it's not you, it's not your identity. They are like clothes, they are like shoes. These are things that you have taken on over time, but the same way that you've taken it on over time, you can also take it off. So that's the encouragement I want to first off, just start with in this video, because as I call out these things, I don't want anyone to feel horrible about themselves or beat themselves up. Understand that we're all working through things, but in order to grow, in order to be the women that the Father has created and called us to be, these things are necessary to know about ourselves and to be aware of, so that we can heal and that we can grow to be who it is that He is desiring for us to be. So the first thing, and some of these things are things that I've struggled with. Actually, let me look at I've struggled with all of them. I ain't even gonna lie. But one of the things that I notice about myself, and it's a pattern that I see in a lot of people, is that we are easily offended. People that have wounded parts of who they are easily offended. It goes back to what I was kind of saying in the beginning, is that sometimes when we have endured trauma, when we have endured experiences that have left us fragmented, that have left us hurt, right? It causes us to be very sensitive to the feedback and criticism of other people. And so you may have people in your life that love you and mean you well, and they are trying to encourage you, whether it's your spouse, whether it's a sister, whether it's a family member, and they're just trying to help you, right? They're telling you something about yourself that you can improve in. And even if they don't do it in the best way, right? Maybe their intentions are well. And so as these things are coming up for you, you're very sensitive to it. It's kind of like a wound, right? Look at that, play on words. So if you think about hurting yourself, anything that touches it is going to cause you to flinch, right? You're going to be very sensitive to that because it's a wounded area. And so one of the things that can be very hard to take on is feedback and criticism, or it causes us to be very easily offended. And that is because there are parts of us that are wounded. So if this is something that you notice about yourself, this is definitely something to consider and pay attention to. You know, when someone tells me about myself, when someone gives me feedback and criticism, how do I take it? Am I easily offended? Do I push them off, right? Or do I consider what it is that they have to say and see, is there some validity to it? I always say, especially if more than one person is saying it, then sometimes we need to pay attention to what it is that people are saying. But a person that oftentimes has wounded parts to who they are very sensitive to feedback and criticism. It is very hard for them to hear about how they can do better, because again, or in another aspect, a lot of people that have a hard time receiving feedback and criticism, they oftentimes already feel really bad about themselves. And so anytime feedback or criticism is given, it's like a shot to who they are, right? It makes them feel even worse, right? It puts them down even more. And so instead of being able to take the feedback and criticism and say, oh, okay, like, yeah, I could see that. Let me improve. Let me have a growth mindset. They have what's called a fixed mindset. And so they have more of this mindset of, you know, well, I feel even worse about myself. myself and I'm such a horrible person, right? Again, it's very hard for you or for the person to take what can be constructive and help them because, again, it's just a very sensitive area and they are already feeling or having some wounds to some degree. Another point that can go along with being easily offended is that it's very hard for you to see yourself. So you are a person where it's always somebody else, right? It's your mama, it's your daddy, it's your grandma, it's the neighbor. It's always somebody else, right? And no matter where you go, you seem to always have a problem. And I don't know if y'all know anybody like that, right? Where no matter where they go, there's always an issue. There is always an issue. They start a new job, they got an issue there. So then they quit that job and they start a new job, but then they got issues there. And the reality is you will realize that there are wounded parts of yourself when it is always other people, right? And you're always moving, trying to find peace, but it seems that issues and difficulties constantly follow you. And the reality is that it continues to follow you because a lot of times it's you. Right? That does not mean that other people never have shortcomings or other people are never in the wrong or other people don't do things, right? But a lot of times we have to be able to get to the point to say, like, you know what, though it may be other people, a lot of times it seems like it's me. Right? I'm the one that's continuing to be easily offended. I'm the one that has a perspective where I feel like people are coming at me. All she said was X, Y, and Z, and now I'm taking it as a personal attack, and I feel like she's coming for me, right? We have to get to the point where we can be honest with ourselves to say, you know what? That's me. And that's the point where I had to come to is when I was having different issues. The first thing I would say, because especially as believers in Christ, one of the things that I noticed that we will do is we will blame the devil for every single thing. And don't get me wrong, the devil is constantly after the saints. He is constantly after people, but it is not always a devil. Sometimes it's just you. Sometimes it's your mindset. Sometimes it's your deeper core issue. Sometimes it's your insecurities, right? And so one of the things I had to learn to say was, you know what, Lord, is it me? Right? Is this a me issue? And one thing that I realized, I'm going to be honest with you, 9 times out of 10, it was a me issue. I am not saying it is always you. No one else is in the wrong. But what I did realize is that a lot of times it was me, right? I had some deeper wounded parts that needed to be dealt with. And until I dealt with that, it was always going to be other people. And no matter where I went, I don't care how many times you changed your church. I don't care how many jobs you go to. I don't care how many times you get a new boyfriend or new friends or cut people off and find new friends. Issues are always going to continue to find you until you deal with the issues within yourself. That's just how it goes. The issue is not always other people. A lot of times, 9 times out of 10, y'all, I'm just going to be real. It's us. It's us. And until we can be honest with it or honest about that, we will continue to have issues. So another sign that you can be a woman that has wounded parts of you is that you have difficulty with intimacy. So intimacy is not just sexual, right? You have difficulty with intimacy and connection, say with women. So maybe you are the type of person where you allow people to get close, but not too close. Right? Maybe on your job, people are like, oh, you're very closed off or you're not a very personable person. And maybe there's a part of you that has some anxiety or fear of letting people in. That is typically a sign that you are a person that has some wounded parts of who you are. Now that obviously can go a little further. One of the ways that I realized I had some deep wounded parts of me was that I had difficulty there, but I also had difficulty with intimacy with my husband. I had endured trauma at a young age. So there were times where I was having flashbacks during intimacy. There was times where just him touching me just felt very uncomfortable because, again, there was deeper wounded parts. And so, again, intimacy again, is not just sexual, but maybe it is sexual. Maybe with your husband, you realize like, hey, I'm not as comfortable or it doesn't feel good and I'm having a hard time connecting with you. Maybe you have connection or you have difficulties connecting with your child, right? That's a part too. For some women, especially women like myself that may have endured like birth trauma, right? Now, thankfully, I did not necessarily experience this with my children, but there are women that I work with that had birth trauma. And so because of that, they have a hard time connecting with their child. And it's very valid. It's very real. Women that had C-sections versus a vaginal birth may sometimes, and women that have had both, right? So I've worked with clients where they've had a C-section and then they've had a vaginal birth, and they felt that they had a harder time connecting with the child that they may have had via a C-section, right? So again, it's not just sexual, but there are very much like other ways that we also will struggle with connection and with intimacy. But this is definitely a sign that you may be dealing with some deeper wounded parts, is that you may have an issue around connecting with people, your children, your supervisor, your coworkers, people in general, right? And maybe you walk in a grocery store and it's very hard for you to even have eye contact. You have a difficulty connecting with people just even visually, right? It's typically a sign that there are some deeper wounded parts to the woman that you are. Another sign that you are a woman that has some wounded parts is physical ailments. So what people may not understand, and some of the work that I do with my coaching clients in the Healing Womanhood coaching program, is around somatic therapy. Soma meaning of the body. The idea with somatic sensing, somatic experiencing, or somatic therapy is that when you have experienced a traumatic event, your body actually holds on to the experience of the trauma. So I talk about this in some of my videos about mind-body connection. So when you experience a traumatic event, your mind and your body, they disconnect in order for your body to go into survival, right? So survival meaning fight or flight. So your body goes into fight or flight, or your nervous system goes into fight or flight. There's mind-body disconnection. And because of that, your mind goes offline. So this is why sometimes people that have experienced trauma, when they're trying to recall certain events, they may not remember all of the events. I don't want to say accurately, but they may not remember all of the events, right? And the reason that they're not able to is because your brain typically goes offline. But what is still there to experience the trauma is your body, right? And this is where somatic experiencing comes in. It is teaching people how to establish or reestablish a mind-body connection. So as you are doing that, as you are establishing that mind-body connection, what is important to tune into is the body and the experience that the body also had. Because not only did the body experience the trauma, but a lot of times the body will hold on to the trauma. And this is where we hear terms like the body stores trauma, or there is trauma trapped in the body. These things are very real. They're so real. And so because the trauma is stored or trapped in the body, it will manifest. It has to come out in some way, right? So this is where I will have clients that are working through autoimmune disease, or you will have clients that have rashes. They just, they go around certain people, or they have certain triggering events and their body responds with a rash. Maybe you notice that you have headaches a lot. Maybe you're not pooping regularly, right? That was a response for me physiologically for a long time, is that my body was not regular when it came to bowel movements, right? Like, let's be real. We're going to be real here, right? So physical ailments is oftentimes a sign. Anxiety attacks. These are signs that there may be some deeper rooted things that also need to be dealt with. The last thing that can be a sign, or the last one that I'm going to share today, that could be a sign that you are a woman that is dealing with some wounded parts or some deeper wounded parts of who you are, is that you can't sit still. So this was me for a long time. If you know me, you know I was a 4 a.m. girly. I would get up 4 a.m. Sunday through Friday, not on the Shabbat, because I rest on the Sabbath, okay? But I was constantly up, being productive, on the go, right? And the reality is that some of us, again, when we have experienced some type of event that puts our nervous system, puts our body into survival mode, rest or fight or flight, we stay there. And so oftentimes our responses when we are triggered, right, or when we are trying to avoid things is continuing to perpetuate that survival mode, the fight or the flight. So for me, when I would get into it with my husband, I would go into fight mode. So even though my husband is safe, I love him, he means me well, if he said something that triggered me in some way that reminded me of an experience or reminded me of those deeper wounded parts of who I was, I would go into fight mode. The other aspect of that is flight, constantly being on the go. So, resting and sitting still, it was uncomfortable for me. And sometimes it still is uncomfortable. And for some people, sitting still, sitting with yourself it's not a comfortable experience. And so you're constantly on the go. And this is why things were so crucial and mental health rates were going through the roof when the pandemic happened, because people were using their jobs and fellowship and church and hanging out with the girlfriends and vacations as a means to avoid those deeper wounded parts that they were constantly trying to run from. Again, fight or flight. They were constantly in flight mode because they didn't want to deal with those things. And so if you notice that you are a person that's always on the go, you're always going on vacation, you always need to be around people, you can't be by yourself, that is oftentimes a sign that you are dealing with some deeper wounded parts that need to be addressed. Now, the thing about all of these things, and these are just some tips that I wanted to share, some things that I think that sometimes we are avoidant of, or we're just not aware of, right? They're things that we overlook and things that we probably do on autopilot, but we're just not even cognizant of, right? The reason I want to bring attention to those things is because they're real. They're real, and they're oftentimes impacting us. They're oftentimes keeping us in survival mode. They're keeping us wounded. And until we shed light on those areas, until we really allow the Father to really help us and bring us through a process of healing, we will continue to perpetuate those wounds. We will continue to perpetuate survival mode. We will continue to perpetuate a life that is opposite of what the Father has created and called us to be. And so if you're finding yourself in this place, if any of these resonated with you and you're like, man, I resonated with one or all of these, right? Because again, as I said, all of these were me at some point, and sometimes these things still come up for me. These things still come up for me. And what that's showing me is, hey, there's a trigger that is present right now. You are being triggered in this moment. And maybe there's still some residue. There's still some things, because again, healing is not a one-time thing. Healing doesn't just happen in 3 months, 6 months, a year. There are ebbs, there are flows, and there are layers to healing. And so maybe you did some work at one point, but now you're like, man, in this new season of now, maybe I'm married, or now I'm in a relationship, or now I have a child, or I've started a new job, and some things are coming up for me. And it's revealing that, like, there's still some aspects to that wound that's affecting me now, and I want support as I'm going through that. Then I definitely encourage you to reach out to me. I would love to support you through the Healing Womanhood coaching program. I work with clients one-on-one or in a group setting, and you can click the link below to get more information and to schedule a call with me. Get on a call, at minimum, get on a call with me. Let's talk. Let's see what's going on, and let's see how I can support you in your journey of healing. But I pray that not only does this shed light, but it reminds you that it's possible to heal, and we all have things that we are working through that we need support in, right? And the Father is fully capable, fully able to see you through that healing journey. And if you need support in that as well, then I would love to do that for you. So definitely subscribe to this channel, comment below if any of these resonate with you, and please share this video with someone that you know it could benefit.